Good afternoon, everybody. But let me start to introduce you to the different people. I am Mariette van Empel. I'm the Director of Sustainable Mobility of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport of the Netherlands, and also co-chair of the TDA, the Transport Decarbonization Alliance. The chair is my Minister Stientje van Veldhoven, whom some of you maybe have seen in the opening session today. So welcome everybody on this session on leveraging transport for green recovery and the road to COP26. And most welcome to my panelists, with whom I will introduce later on. So this session, we will explore how transport is essential to green economic recovery. And it follows the session, the plenary session. And Lucia provided some insights already in green recovery action that support meeting climate, health, and equity needs. So this is important as we approach also COP26, and countries can use this moment to raise climate ambition. WRI was commissioned by the TDA with Greenberg, my minister, as a chair, to prepare a white paper on these key actions, and this paper will be released soon. So in addressing also the economic pain caused by the COVID pandemic, governments are taking action and many are investing in transport with unprecedented funds to rebuild the economy. As they said, building back better. And sustainable mobility is essential to this green recovery. Investing in public transport and active mobility, boosting electrification, stronger intercity rail systems, and investments in research and development creates jobs. And Rustir this morning showed us that the research by C40 that investments in sustainable mobility creates almost 52 million of jobs around the world. So that's incredible. And last December, the TDA organized the En route to COP26 event on driving action for zero emission transport. And one of the key takeaways was how to link economic recovery with raised ambition in the COP26 agenda. So it's no small task to decarbonize this sector, and we'll need a comprehensive approach with countries, cities, and companies, the 3 C's from the TDA, and all contributing towards this end. So accelerating action is key, and with that, I look forward to the perspectives in this panel representing these key actors, country, government, finance, and I wish to introduce our panel. And maybe because we are in panel with 3 of the 4 people already, may I ask you to introduce yourself and ask maybe the question, what's your contribution to sustainable mobility? So can I start with you, Paulo?
Of course. So my name is Paulo Manes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can hear me. Hi, my name is Paulo Manes, and I'm the Vice President responsible for business development and new mobility at the PTV Group. PTV is a private company, so one of the C's, and we are the world market leader in software for traffic mobility. So we plan and optimize everything that moves people and goods worldwide. We do that in 128 countries around the world, and about 4,000 cities around the world use our software on a daily basis to optimize their traffic. And so for us, it's important to understand how the mobility ecosystem works and how we can contribute to that. We also have a part on logistics, and just a direct, easy to understand contribution. We optimize over 1 million trucks in Europe alone with their daily routes, and as a consequence of that optimization, we save every single day 30,000 tons of CO2 in that process.
Impressive. Okay. Thank you very much. Then over to Alan Greenberg. Good morning, because I think it's still morning in California.
It is morning here. Good morning, and thanks to everyone who has joined us, and thanks to the organizers of this morning's panel. I am the Deputy Director for Sustainability at the California Transportation. The state of California is a TDA member, so we're not one of the three C's, but we're very happy and proud to belong to the TDA. My organization, the Department of Transportation, has a staff of 22,000 people. And we are the owner-operators of the California State Highway System, so approximately 55,000 lane miles of highways. We're also involved, very closely involved in planning, in funding activities relating to transit, in an increased level of engagement around active transportation and emerging technologies. And we work very closely across state government with the California Air Resources Board and the California Energy Commission that have key roles in the decarbonization efforts that were mentioned by Mariette.
Okay, very nice to have you here, Ellen. Thank you. Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Edwards. Dialing in today from the UK COP26 team. So I lead on UK's COP26 work on sectoral cooperation. So an effort the UK is taking as incoming COP president to bring together the right groups of countries to make progress on sectoral climate change decarbonisation and ensuring the transition to net zero economies is quicker, easier and cheaper for everyone. So within my team, we lead on our COP26 work on the transition to zero emission vehicles, which I'm sure we'll come on to talk about later today. And in a previous life, I led on the UK's strategy for the transition to zero emission vehicles domestically and used to work in our UK Department of Transport, so have a good sense of the wider transport ecosystem. So really excited to be here today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for having you. So Ben, welcome to this panel. And you came in a little bit later, but I asked to introduce the members of the panel themselves and ask you what's your contribution to sustainable mobility. So please go ahead, Binyam. And then we lost him again. I'll wait maybe some moments if he's coming in again. And if not, we just start. And maybe I can just start with you, Stephanie, to ask you some questions. The UK submitted recently its NDC target with a goal to reach 68 emission reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And can you tell us about the plans of the UK, how they are linking the raised climate ambition and the green recovery?
Yeah, great, thank you. So I think it's really striking how different the conversation is in 2021 and the conversations that I'm in internally from the conversations even 2 or 3 years ago about the link between growth and climate. And I think, there's certainly a few years ago, I think there was a lot more of an emphasis on this trade-off, the idea that there is the trade-off between the two. And I think now I'm very glad to say that I think we've developed the conversation towards seeing that there is no sustainable growth without transition to a net zero economy. And that is the message reflected very clearly by the UK Prime Minister, and also I would say an increasing number of governments across the world as well. So, it's, I think, more than 60% of global GDP is now covered by a net zero target, which is, seemed almost unimaginable 5 years ago. So from the transport sector perspective, it feels really fundamental from where we sit that, modal shift and getting people out of individual cars and vans and vehicles and into public transport, into active methods of transport like cycling and walking. And we are investing in the UK tens of billions of pounds at the moment in enhancements of the rail network, city public transport and buses. And I think that's, a big cultural shift that has to happen here in the UK. I think elsewhere around the world, that cultural shift is further ahead than probably we are in some areas. But I suppose the area where I can speak perhaps in more detail, is around focusing in on the fact that there will still be cars on the road in 2040, 2050 of some sort. Others are better placed to say whether they'll be autonomous and shared and connected, and I'm sure lots of other advancements as well. But we at least know they need to be zero emission, and they need to be zero emission as soon as possible and as quickly as possible. And looking at from a COP26 and UK climate change perspective, about a third of UK emissions are from transport alone, and about 90% are from just cars. And are
you also for the COP26? Are you planning to do something about that?
Yeah, of course. So maybe I can start with what we're doing in the UK, and then talk a bit more about how that fits into the wider picture, because I think that's a great question. So the UK recently announced a commitment to 100% new zero emission car sales being zero emission by 2035, and a commitment to phase out non-electrified vehicles or non-zero emission vehicles by 2030. And so we've been really clear on the outcome we want to get to, and there's a whole host of multi-billion pound package to help get there. But actually, I think we know in the UK and working with partners through the TDA and other forums that there's a limit to how green our recovery from the current COVID crisis can be without other countries and other regions globally moving and transitioning towards zero emission vehicles as well. And it's kind of at the center of our COP26 presidency is this idea that we'll make the transition quicker, easier, and cheaper if we work together. So here's where I think the real opportunity is for building back better is working together and collaborating. So for COP26 specifically, we have set up this what we call the ZEVS Transition Council. So this is made up of representatives from more than half the global car market to talk about measures that we can take together to accelerate the transition and tackle some of the shared barriers as well, because it's clear that the changes needed are deep, systemic, structural, and action is needed from governments globally to help put us back on track to meet our Paris goals and go more quickly than we are at the moment. Yeah, maybe I'll pause there and open up the discussion, but that's a quick run through of how the UK sees
Great.
it.
Thank you very much. Great to hear. Every time I'm just trying to give Benjamin the word, he is away again. So let's try Paulo. Your PTV group. How are you thinking? Oh, there's Binyam. Let me try. Sorry, Paulo. Let me try Binyam. Hello, Binyam. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Binyam? No. Okay, Paulo. The question for you, your PTV group, are you thinking about how it can support a new and better way of doing things coming out of this global pandemic and economic slump?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been, from our point of view, a unique global experience as well. It has not all been negative. There are some things that we were able to move forward. We had a unique experience where we, for instance, had cities working, really focusing on the urban logistics part and not having overall traffic causing delays or causing issues in the logistics part. That was very impressive, and it's a very important experiment, I think, that we will do, because we realize how important and how urban logistics can, for instance, very quickly adapt to a new situation if things are a certain way. And the same with supply chains were able to react very quickly to the changes. Yes, there's the famous toilet paper shortages, but very quickly we realized worldwide that we were able to balance things. So it was not all negative. And the other thing that I also have to say that I found very interesting is that the way that the transportation industry per se has adapted to it, because overnight we had to have social distancing, new rules, hygiene rules. It was quite difficult to adapt, and everybody was able to adapt very, very, very quickly. And for me, one of the most impressive things that I've seen was also how, for instance, bus companies were changing, and yes, they were being affected, but also the reduction in demand on certain routes also enables some companies around the world to create other opportunities and to fulfill some of the gaps that we had in public transport and to serve more. And I see quite a lot of cities. It's not unusual to have growth in terms of the coverage and the use of the public transport network, for instance, about 10%. So it's, yes, there's less passengers, but they can get more routes, they can do more things. And I think that's very important. And we saw even in the UK the acceleration of some of the new mobility means like kick scooters or bike sharing. All this was very interesting, and we saw companies working together closely in terms of fulfilling each other and understanding the synergy between them. So it became also very much a cooperative environment that really stimulated the interaction between in a way, the 3 C's that we talked about in the Decarbonizing Alliance that we're trying to do, but especially between government, being local, central, and some of the private companies. And yeah, we were able to see that change and how that was able to take place. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I popped out a short while, but I did hear you. So your group has also been an active company in supporting sustainable mobility, like we've talked each other before, also on the public transport and the active mobility and road safety. Can you also, from your experience, tell us how can we connect those things like safety, health, creating jobs?
Actually, I believe that they are already connected.
Okay.
The challenge is to really understand how they are, in what way they are connected, and by how much, and how to make the most out of it. And that's the challenge that we as a company also have, is to try to help understand the whole process. That's why our software is used for that purpose, exactly to ensure that you get the most of it, and that cities and governments and so on can understand and extract the most out of it. Because I see a lot of solutions to problems sometimes come from really unexpected situations, and sometimes you don't understand. I have an anecdotal evidence. My hometown of Lisbon, there was a lot of issues about people walking, and that people didn't like to walk. And in the end, we found out that the solution to the problem, it was really a logistics program. And the reason why this was is because people did not like to walk on cobblestones. Then we made an analysis to find out where this problem was. And then coincidentally, we found out that mainly in bars and restaurants, this was where this was taking place. So the first thought was, yeah, people like to drink, they like to enjoy themselves. But then they realized that the damage was taking place at the same place. And then we realized that that damage was caused by trucks not being able to have a place to load and unload for restaurants. And basically they were putting 2 wheels on the pavement, which was never load bearing for those weights, and causing the damage, then caused the issue about the pedestrians. So it's not that necessarily there's a direct link to one thing to the other. And it's really understanding that ecosystem. That's what makes the value, and it's a value of understanding and not just having data. You know, we saw it during the pandemic that everybody had big data, yeah, but they didn't have the right data to make some of the analysis. So it's that balance that we need.
Yeah, wonderful example of the balance that you were explaining.
And that's really where everything comes together. And I just wanted to say that, and that's where I really feel that, and sorry to talk about the 3 C's again, but the pandemic helped us in a way to better understand each other and to find better ways of communication and of sharing experiences and helping each other. And I know the cities and governments have wonderful people, but companies also have wonderful people, and they are not always just looking at the profitability point of view. Yes, it's an important factor, of course, but there are elements where they can work together and they can help each other, and that includes cities and governments, and that's really the collaborative. Sorry, I can't re-emphasize about the collaborative nature of what we're trying to do, but that's really important, and that to me is the key to this whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paulo. It's very nice to hear you stress this importance of cities, companies, and countries, and as an active member on the Transport Decarbonization Alliance. That's very nice to hear. Then let's go to Ellen. Not exactly from the three C's like you already said, but even also very important subnational level from the Californian state. Can you do you see also this importance of collaboration with the companies in your state and in California? And can you also a bit more about how California, who is always a front runner in our view in the United States, how you can encourage to get more sustainable mobility?
Yes, thank you. So certainly with regard to collaboration, the necessity of continuing collaboration between governmental entities as well as between the public and private sector, is a key part of the entire transition. I do want to just note with regard to the pandemic. So in conversations about impacts on mobility, I've been using the phrase, this is an unwelcome natural experiment. So we are seeing, many changes. People are, I think, catching glimmers of some positive in this, such as increased cycling and walking in some locations, though not all. But I try to caution that all of these changes that we're seeing, of course, are married to catastrophic in other ways. So we have the challenge, right, of finding the path to making the positive bit sticky, as it were. And I think with regard to the equity and the I would say the adverse distribution of impacts on lower income communities and communities of color, very much reflecting societal factors that have been in place and have been, in some cases, exacerbated by the transportation system. So we've really, in the state of California, been trying to address this set of issues as we look at the decarbonization challenge. So I'll point in particular to several moves by Governor Newsom, a series of executive orders, and I will post in the chat the link if folks would like to make reference to these. One specifically addresses the way that we use our transportation funding. In California, 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions are connected with tailpipe emissions, another 10% associated with refinery activity and related industrial activity. So we have to bring down emissions from the transportation sector, and that's front and center. So one aspect of that is trying to move us away from our world famous dependence on the automobile in California. And that is the issue that Governor Newsom was addressing in his executive order N1919 that looks at $5 billion in annual transportation spending and asks how we can redirect that spending from existing revenue streams in order to support that transition. In several other executive orders, particularly N7920, I'm sure many folks in the audience are aware that's where the governor set forth state policy that by 2035 we will eliminate new sales of internal combustion engine light-duty vehicles. The executive order also addresses medium and heavy-duty vehicles and off-road equipment. And just one last thing I'll mention that is a different angle is that we're addressing the issue of nature-based solutions to our climate challenges, and that's receiving increasing focus in the state. both because of the value of natural and working lands in carbon sequestration, and to protect our forest resources, our agricultural resources. And then from a transportation and mobility point of view, we're increasingly interested in looking at how we can use land preservation to shape urban form in a way that then influences travel patterns and VMT or VKT. So lots going on there, and there will be more emerging as we work, obviously, with the new federal administration.
Okay, great to hear. Thank you. Binyam, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. Can you?
Great.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
No problem. Nice to have you with us. Maybe would you like to introduce yourself, Binyam, and maybe you can also elaborate a little bit about, because Alan said investments are very important, and you from the World Bank, maybe you can tell us something about how can we steer the investments and identify investment needs towards green and equitable recovery through sustainable transport.
Okay, thank you very much, Mariette, and thanks colleagues in the panel and all the speakers around, all the participants. So my name is Reja. I'm with the World Bank. I'm the Global Practice Manager for Transport. I've just assumed that role in November. I'm actually currently based in Beijing, where I've been here for several years, managing the China, Central Asia, Mongolia transport program. So I will be moving to DC very shortly. So that's my work background. I think for the question that you asked, Mariette, and what Alan just said about the need for investment to be steered towards green transport, this is exactly, I think, the opportunity what we have now in the post-COVID world. What we're seeing in our client countries, as well as many other countries around the world, they're using the COVID as an opportunity to kickstart their economy or a stimulus program. And transport is figuring quite heavily in those programs. So we have that opportunity, but at the same time, we also have seen quite a lot of trends pre-pandemic that were quite encouraging in terms of digitalization, in terms of thinking about mobility more broadly, thinking about compact cities, and integrating mobility with urban planning. Unfortunately, we're also seeing not so good trends in terms of the travel behavior of individuals running over from public transport and maybe other not so good type of mobility patterns, like increase in private car sales are increasing, for example, in many countries. So what we are now trying to do is using this new investment program that we are supporting to the countries in the stimulus program to do a few things. One is to use the stimulus program to make it quite large and quite transformative, so that if you think only in a smaller scale, if you're just only thinking about investment in transport only for short-term goals of creating jobs, for example, which is exceedingly important today, but can you use that investment also to achieve long-term goals? So we're trying to mix the stimulus program with the long-term goals of the countries for actually improving mobility. We know that from the 2008-2009 stimulus program, those stimulus that did actually did a long-term view had a much more impact, much more transformational impact than the ones that just did only maintenance of highways, for example, just to create jobs and to put it back. So it's not to say that jobs are not important, but jobs are exceedingly important. But think about long-term investment. The good thing is that many countries do have on the shelf some really good projects, maybe not so good as well. So you want to delete the not so good ones. But these countries haven't been sitting idle even from the pre-COVID. They have been crying out for funding to support those kind of projects, so we can accelerate those, and that's what we're doing. So I think mixing stimulus with long-term goals is what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you very much, Binyam. Maybe question for Stephanie. If you, as preparing for the COP26, but also as a country, what would you like to ask from, for example, Paulo, as a company, for getting a jump start towards zero emission in 2050?
Yeah, great, thanks, and really interesting insights from the rest of the panel as well, so thank you. So the first and slightly cheeky intervention I would make is that we currently have our expressions of interest process open. So if anyone listening into this call or on the panel would like to come to COP26 and exhibit their work on transport and some of the excellent efforts towards decarbonisation, now is a proposal, and we would love to consider that as part of our wider COP26 planning. So it's a very specific ask there from everyone on this call, and I can share the link in the chat as well. But from a more kind of conceptual, broader point of view, I suppose when we think of the challenge of transport decarbonisation, I often think of kind of 3 layers of action. So there's what needs to happen internationally to enable transport decarbonisation on the ground. So that's bringing down the cost of particular technologies. Maybe it's changing societal norms in the way that we think about transport internationally and ourselves. Then there's the kind of more local end, which is about finding solutions that work in a particular locale and for particular people and particular transport needs. And I think there it's at all levels, it's of course a combination of government, businesses, civil society, and others. But I think, what Paulo said about the example from Lisbon and, how local and specific that kind of insight is, I think that's exactly the kind of granularity and kind of richness of the collaboration that needs to happen. And I think our challenge as COP26 president is to be able to spotlight some of the best examples of that happening on the ground for others to learn from, and to share and experience what some of that rich data that Paulo mentioned looks like in practice, and how collaborations have worked locally and specifically. But I think we also have a special responsibility as COP president to make sure that big international picture of how affordable these technologies, how readily available are they? So, for instance, in the instance of zero-emission vehicles, how how are we making sure that the transition truly is global, that people can afford these vehicles, and that we are putting in place the right international enable infrastructure to even enable those more local solutions. So I think it's a combination of bottom up and top down, and somewhere in the middle as well, of probably sharing best practice and thinking of this as a collective problem, because ultimately I think it is.
Yeah, I see also Ellen. I think you want to answer on and give a reaction to Stephanie, if I am right.
I actually was noting some of the questions in the chat. I think I made some great points, and I know there are others in the state administration for the meetings, and we're looking forward to participating. So no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I saw you look on the screen, so I thought you wanted to react. But maybe I can ask you a question from Hilda Martinez. She asked you a question about some studies who have been done lately. And to a certain point, it is, I think, 25%, Hilda is mentioning, is the reduction should come from reducing VMT. And could you expand on how California is planning to do that?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for the question. So the state has planned to meet our climate change goals. It is the climate change scoping plan that's prepared by the California Air Resources Board, and it's based on our statewide mobile source strategy. So there have been 3 key areas of the mobile source strategy, 3 key areas of state activity. And the first is vehicles and fuels. Sorry, I'm misstating. The first is vehicles, the second is fuel efficiency, The third is reducing vehicle miles traveled. My own career has been very much focused around the issue of reducing vehicle miles traveled, or VKT, as many of you would say. I'm an urban planner. My work for several decades has been focused on trying to create places that operate efficiently and support people using active modes and transit, as well as more efficient use of the automobile. So that great interest of mine. It has been extremely difficult to move the needle on this. We've had some periods, particularly post 2008 recession, where we saw drops in VMT. We saw postponement of driver's license acquisition by young people. We saw some other very favorable trends. Then we saw some backsliding. So we continue to move forward in supporting development styles that are friendlier to efficient travel and active travel. We are very much interested in converting the way we fund and pay for our transportation facilities so that there are price signals that encourage the use of higher occupancy vehicles, as well as move people towards active transportation. But this is a huge, it's a huge lift. We are actively working on it, as are our partners. And I think it's essential for the health of Californians. The sedentary lifestyles that people experience have extremely adverse health consequences, along with the issue, obviously, of air pollution and other, particulate matter pollution associated with the level of vehicle use that we have currently. So we're working on it, and there are strategies. This investment strategy that I talked about earlier is a big piece of it. The state is greatly increasing our investment in cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. We're seeing increases in agencies deciding to reallocate road space. I do want to mention on cycling, particularly because we're talking also about equity and about just transition. The infrastructure is just one piece. Another piece is, do people own bicycles? Do people have access to e-bikes, which I think can really be transformative? For example, in the States, the trip to high school.
Yeah. Ellen just stopped. But I think the point she made about the importance of the possession of a bike, I completely underline. I heard somebody once say, would it be possible to give every child, instead of a book or a laptop, a bicycle? And I think that might be a very interesting plan to see if we can support all over the world to give children the access to a bike. But maybe Binyam can, because you said also about something about promoting active mobility.
Actually, this is a really important topic, both from a mobility point of view, but also from a supply chain for industrial policy point of view. Bikes and e-bikes, two-scooters and three-scooters, they're a good also way to kickstart an industry in a country. For example, Vietnam is moving towards electrification of its mobility because they are investing quite a lot on e-bikes and electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So I think in a development sense, if we think of mobility as a supply chain system as a bigger agenda, then we can work on it. So producing bicycles in developing countries will be cheaper, will create jobs, and will also provide mobility to the countries. Yeah. So we should certainly include that. I don't know about giving it free to every child. Most countries probably can't afford that. But at least if we can help them produce it locally, it will be much cheaper.
Yeah. So maybe that's kind of crowdfunding action we can do for the COP26. But let's see if we can can see to something of that. Maybe can you also tell us something a little bit more, Benjamin, about your ambition, your main ambition for COP26 from the investment of green recovery and green investments?
So we're working with partners in the development space in this, bilaterals and MDBs. Obviously, the British government being one of the key drivers, and the WRI also key drivers. So what we're saying is, let's look at what are the kind of investments and policy changes countries need to make into moving to carbon neutral and low carbon mobility systems. So we're identifying a few areas where we can actually do a deep dive, do more analytical work, and identify investment programs, policy choices that countries can take, and then have a number of conversations with all the stakeholders after COP26, and then on COP26 also present this as a way of doing this. So basically, it's to look at what are the way you can shift, what are the instruments that you need to shift driving to public transport or to active mobility. What investments do you need, or what policy reforms do you need to support that? How can you electrify the transport system while also at the same time cleaning the source of power? And what would it take? What are the investment and the policies that are going to be needed? And also thinking also about compact city. How can you really reduce the need to travel? How can you avoid them without really unnecessary investments? So there's quite a bit of, I think, analytical work that we will be doing, and this will inform the decision makers. In addition, also, we are also looking at helping countries to prioritize their investment program and to do more feasibility study as we do transport programs, so that it actually takes into account this one. So decarbonization of transport is really, just to say, our main driver moving forward, because we see that as a very good organizing framework for providing mobility, for providing access and connectivity. So we focus on mobility and access and connectivity in our transport lending and business, but we want to also decarbonize that as we move forward, as we try to provide inclusive and safe mobility, but it would be with decarbonized. So you will see, I think, quite a lot of analytical work coming out of our work, and hopefully we will partner with many of you to deliver on this program.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Paulo, if you hear all this, what do you think as a company? Do you see opportunities, and what do you want from, for example, from staff or in COP26?
Yeah, there's quite a lot that we see and that we would like to change, but I think we are already going in the right way. So it's not that there's measures that I think that we need to do, but of course that in mobility, the way that the new mobility, if you want, has come in, has been sometimes not necessarily held in the best way. There's been a lot of conflicts between private and public entities, between governments at various levels. And there's an element where we need to be better at that discussion, and I think there's some good examples of how that has taken place. And of course, again, on the leverage of the pandemic, I think that we all want to see a more sustainable mobility, and we want to see a mobility that is permanently that way, not temporarily this way. And the goal I can see that everybody is trying to get is all these pop-up type bike lanes, all these temporary measures, all these things, they need to become permanent. The fact that we now realize that working from home works, it's a good way to reduce the issues that we have. And it might be that a lot of the issues that we have will change, but one of the things that is very important also from my point of view, and we can't talk everything here, is about the infrastructure. What do we do with the infrastructure? Do we just accept what we have and adapt everything towards it, or do we still need to invest in infrastructure? And to be honest, I don't know the answer now, but it's something that will come, and there's a lot that has to change, and there's a lot that will move forward. And it's very important to have a clear and, in a way, visionary leadership in terms of where each city, each country, each region, where do they want to go. And I think that all of them now, we cannot talk to say that decarbonization and safe and resilient mobility is a separate issue. No, it's core of everything that we're trying to do and achieve. And that's what I really would like, is to see a better understanding on how things are interconnected and how we can tackle them in one way. A good example, we were talking today earlier on, we were talking about how it's so unsafe to have cars from the first world going into the second world, but they also are the cars that also bring the pollution to the developing world. So they are connected, and we don't necessarily connect them all the time. And I believe that some measures are quite easy, straightforward, and sometimes they are not understood, they are not necessarily clear. But I think with time we're seeing that this is becoming clear, and that cities need to change, we need to evolve in a different way, that society will change, and we need to go with it, but in a proactive way and not in a reactive way. And that's what I would like to see at COP, is this change of mindset in terms of how we move forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I see Alan not also, but you're back again. We finished and having a bike for every child plan, but maybe on this idea, I think the urban planning is also one of the key elements, which was also mentioned in the opening plenary. In California, you don't have really a spatial problem like in the Netherlands, but how are you going around with urban planning and also the views on sustainable and active mobility?
So I would say, in California, from my perspective, the single biggest urban planning issue is housing affordability, and a very, very drastic shortfall in our housing production relative to need. And this is a distortion in the market that makes people live far from their jobs, that creates hardship for many, many, really threatens the state as an attractor of people, as a supporter of healthy households and communities. And it's a big focus of the administration. All of our land use authority or permitting authority is local, with very minor exceptions. So there are a lot of challenges with stimulating that increased level of housing production. But it is, a very essential issue, as it is in other, particularly coastal cities across the country. So that's a key issue there. The active transportation, I think, has a huge amount of support from many local organizations, and I want to credit the engagement of NGOs and the emergence of the entire community of NGOs engaged in the sustainable and active transportation area, as well as the environmental justice area. These groups are working closely with us, and it's a really, really beneficial to have that activity. So I'd say we're seeing more progress on that infrastructure side. We're working very diligently on the safety side. Safety is my department's top priority. It's really key, is one of the factors influencing people's mode choice. The other, just one quick perspective, one of the things we're seeing during the pandemic is that working from home does not mean not driving. And there's some very interesting pre-pandemic research on telework. There's some international research, actually, that has shown across countries, in some instances, actually an increase in VMT associated with people who are working remotely because they're home, they have a car, they have more discretion, they want to get out. So one thing that I've been trying to focus on as we talk about transit, everyone's expressed their support for supporting transit recovery, is that we actually, particularly in the US, worked and lived. I think there's an underappreciation for the fact that transit ridership suppresses driving. If you're a transit commuter, you can't drive all day. And not only are you away from your vehicle all day, but in many, many cases, the transit work destination is a place where you can then accomplish personal business and enjoy yourself as part of the day when you have taken transit to a location where services, amenities are available. So there's this huge effect of actually suppressing trip making that I think maybe we don't appreciate enough. It's not just the commute trip that is transferred to transit, but lots of other trips that become active transportation or a short trip.
That we are losing Ellen, but is she back again? I don't think so. But what Ellen said was, I think, very important, that with the pandemic, working from home doesn't mean there's less driving, and also creating the inequality, I think, in the world by having some people actually increase their movements and other ones who can't, because the public transport is used less and less. There was also a question I saw for you, Stephanie, about how is England, the UK going beyond electrification? What's the role of the active mobility in the UK's recovery and long-term climate agenda? And what can be done at the national level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I echo a lot of the themes that have been raised already. So our independent advisors for climate change, the UK Committee on Climate Change, actually, I think their most recent report said there'll have to be a reduction in the use of cars by about, I think, I'm going to get the figure wrong, but I think it was about 20% by 2030 if we're to meet our NDC goals, which is pretty big. And I think all of the work that has been mentioned already, so investing in public transport networks and investing in planning, thinking about how do we make new parts of our cities and towns, cycling and walking first and cars later. I just reflect on my own experience living in London during the pandemic, and there was a big push by the mayor in London to put in place bike lanes and close off some roads to be pedestrian and bike only. And I think there's actually been some instances where that's proved to be controversial. People have knocked down the barriers that were put in place. There's been a debate in just the city alone about what the right balance is there. So I think, we are a society, like many others, built around cars. And I think that transition, not just from a policy perspective, but also from a social perspective, about how do we change our relationship with cars, and how do you make it easy for people to, as you say, have a bike from birth or whatever it is, but change the relationship and expectation of travel, I think is a really interesting question that, we certainly look forward to at COP26 and in other forums, learning from the experiences of different cities and governments across the world as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So let I try to, conclusions might be too much, but some notes of my part which I've heard And for one, I think change is happening, as Stephanie was also telling us. We can speed it up by experiments and also brave politicians. So I think it's really necessary that if we want to have this change permanent and sustainable, we need leadership. And by connecting those dots, which we have heard in this meeting, we might step up this change. And for me, I think the key is also to scale up investments, and that we all have to do our part in this systemic transition. And I think as the Netherlands and as the TDA, the Transport Decarbonization Alliance, I think as Ben says, let's take a deep dive on investments, and let's work ambitiously on targets for zero emission vehicles, including freight, which is also very important. We didn't talk a lot about freight, but also in the inner cities, I think that's very important for air quality. And connect the city, countries, regions, and companies in scaling up. And last but not least, let's work on those bicycles. I saw also in the remarks that in Bengal it has been done. Every child a bicycle, maybe a bicycle by birth, but maybe you can find some nice idea for the COP26 on to stimulate active mobility. So thank you all for participating, and I've seen there are some questions which were also answered in the chat box. Also a lot of documents shared, very nice to see, and also some questions for summary documentations that will be all be found in the main page of this 3 days happening. So to panelists, thank you very much. It's always too short, 1 hour, but thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time on the Sustainable Transport Agenda.